a little bit of confusion this morning surrounding the safety of millions of Australian children returning to classrooms, with schools issuing various warnings following the coronavirus outbreak.
Some are urging students who've recently been to China to stay at home. Others are simply told to take caution. Education Minister Dan Tehan joins us now from Canberra. Minister, good morning to you. What advice are parents supposed to listen to here?
Well, what the Australian government has been encouraging parents and schools and childcare centres and universities, the advice that they should be listening to is that of the medical experts, both the medical experts here in Australia and the medical experts internationally. And that advice is, unless you've been in direct contact with someone who has the virus or are showing symptoms, you're fine to go to school or go to a childcare centre.
Given the information that was handed out last night at about midnight by Marissa Paynter, this sort of flow of information is just weird, and it's not good enough. I don't understand why she didn't come out and say this yesterday afternoon or come out and do a press conference this morning to allay people's fears. The problem is you have parents at home not knowing what to do because the information has not been clear and present.
Well, Cal, I'm not quite sure what that advice is. Midnight at 5:05 yesterday afternoon, we advised there had been no change to the advice that we were giving to schools, to universities, to childcare centres. We made sure that that was disseminated right across the nation. But we've been very clear as a government. We've got to work with state and territory health authorities, and when it comes to schools, work with state and territory education ministers, and that's what we will continue to do. And if the medical advice changes, then we will advise people immediately.
Some experts declaring the spread of the disease unstoppable.
We're joined now by President of the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners, Dr Harry Nespolon. Harry, good morning to you. Dr Harry, rather.
You can call me Harry. Good morning.
I was really concerned about this over the last couple of days. It would get into a school. It is now this morning, we can confirm, in a school, Epping Boys School. That's a school of 1,200. That's a school community of 1,200. Then you go teachers, then you go families. It's a real worry for parents.
Oh, absolutely, and that's why they've closed down the school, because it's very unlikely that a lot of parents are going to want to send their children to the school. But it's a broader issue. I mean, if you sort of move that into the hospital setting, if you start closing down hospitals or large numbers of people not coming to hospitals, or dare I say it, in general practice, general practitioners are concerned about their well-being. It's a pretty terrible circle downwards, isn't it?
Yeah. So if we look at this student and the other pupils that he would have been exposed to that day, as we said, teachers, we don't know, how did he get to school? Did he catch a train? Did he visit the shops after school? I mean, those people who were exposed to him, how at risk are they?
Well, they are at risk. I mean, it depends on whether he had any symptoms at all. So if he was coughing and spluttering and wasn't following his antiviral request, coughing into his elbow, for example, there's a risk that he would have infected a few people on the way through.
So it would only be if he was walked past you and he's coughed at that moment?
So we know that it passes through droplets rather than aerosol. So what that means is you really need to get a little bit of secretion on you, and that tends to disappear. Aerosol means that once it's in the room and it'll infect everyone. So that's sort of the way the flu's spread, and that's why it spreads quickly.
The last thing we want here is for this young fellow to be in any way ostracised or treated poorly. It's not his fault. But inside a school community, as Ali points out rightly, the contact with people is everywhere. And so does it get to a point, given that he's only got bad flu-like symptoms, do we go, this is too hard to contain, let's just let it go?
Well, there's certainly a group of people that think that we're overreacting to the coronavirus.
Are we?
I don't think so. I think that it's fair to say that people are scared and people are concerned and worried. I mean, we may make fun about the toilet paper, but it's a reflection of where people think it's at. I think the government's got to try and keep reassuring people about that at the moment it's not a huge risk for us. The good news for that young man is that it's almost certain that he will recover. So, but But look, if you're over 85, you've got about a 15% chance of dying if you get your coronavirus.
And this is our risk, isn't it? Because we've already seen an aged care facility go into lockdown.
Being refused at the front desk because you're a bit ill when you go and visit your mother or your father. I think the Attorney General was saying that we might be sort of offended by some of the things that might be required to help control the virus, and I think we need to be ready for that.
In what ways do you think that we're going to be shocked?
Oh, well, you know, places will be locked down, places will be, you won't be able to go to theatres or cinemas. I mean, the Grand Prix is going to be an interesting test of how well things go. Hopefully no one gets infected while they're at the Grand Prix, but we've
Of course, classes are continuing exactly the same today and tomorrow, and I'm pleased to announce that next week Queensland schools will move to student-free. And of course, though, it is also really important to recognise that schools will remain open, but it will allow children of essential workers and vulnerable children to remain at school and for teachers to prepare to learn from prepare to move to learning from home. So this is really important. It's exactly what we have been pushing, that the essential workers, and that means really anyone who is currently in our workforce. So it's not just our health workers, it's not just our emergency services workers, it's not just our police workers, it involves anyone who's in our workforce, including people who stack shelves at Coles and Woolies and work in a whole different range of industries, that their students will still be allowed to go to school. So I really want to thank the community. I know the community has had a lot of mixed reactions, and we've listened, and I think it's very important that we do cater for our schools across the state to make sure that our workforce, that their students are able to go to school. In addition, the minister earlier this week gave a direction that for those people who are 60 and over in the school community who have one of those underlying conditions, that they do not have to have contact in the school environment, or they can choose to work from home. I think that is absolutely important. And of course, this is an unprecedented time in our history. So these measures is at the discretion of the states, and we have made this decision collectively. The minister and I have had many conversations about this, and schools will be open next week for children of essential workers. Then I might ask Minister Grace to say a few more words about that, and then we're happy to take some questions and I can talk about some other issues. Grace.
Thank you, Premier. Good morning. Obviously, the health, wellbeing and safety of our students, teachers and teacher aides and staff are our highest priority, but we do have to prepare for what the potential future may be. So as the Premier has announced, from Monday, the 30th of March, we will be moving to student-free days, but we do stress that schools will remain open for those workers who have students and are working in the essential services area, and that is obviously workers who are required in their workplace. And the Premier has outlined a couple of examples, such as those who are stacking the shelves of our supermarkets. It's important that we remain open for these workers because we do not want to put pressure on the economy and enable those workers to be able to continue to provide for the community at large. Long day care centres and outside school hours care will continue, but parents are reminded of the need to stay home as much as possible and adhere to the self-isolation rules. So they will be there essentially for those workers required in their workplace. This is unprecedented history and unprecedented times. That's why the student-free days next week will enable our teachers to prepare for learning at home and to be able to deliver the curriculum requirements of students when we work out exactly what is going to happen into the future. At the moment, parents can access learning materials via the new Learning at Home Resource Hub available through the Department of Education website. And can I thank the department, who has done an excellent job in providing at least 2 weeks' work already on that site, and we are preparing further weeks in advance for student learning so that we can continue on with the learning for students depending on what happens, obviously, into the future. As the Premier said, the 2 weeks of learning is ready to go right now on that hub, and we will keep adding weeks of learning as we continue on. And the student-free days will enable teachers to prepare their classes. They may have to prepare packs in areas as well, virtual learning, and obviously receive the training, because this will be a completely new manner in which we deliver learning to students at home. We have provided additional cleaning for schools, and that is underway right now, and they are being very warmly welcomed by the schools. We will ensure that any teacher or staff member, teacher aide, who has a concern that they are in the high-risk category when it comes to contracting COVID-19, that we are accommodating them, either working from home or making suitable arrangements so that they do not place themselves in unnecessary contact with students. They are all being accommodated, and I ask that staff in that category obviously contact their principals and supervisors to make suitable arrangements. And we clearly are also ensuring that parents keep sick children at home, please, and that teachers and principals have the authority to be able to obviously contact the parent and ensure that the child is maintained at home until they are well. We don't want to take any unnecessary risks. It has always been the case that if you are not feeling well, or if your child is not feeling well, they must remain home until they are better, and we are giving principals and teachers the tools to be able to ensure that no one is placed in any unnecessary risk. It's also very important that we say a big thank you to all of our childcare educators, to all of our teachers and teacher aides and staff. These are unprecedented times, and we know that there are concerns and that people are anxious out there, and workers are anxious as well. They have done a magnificent job. Our childcare educators and workers have done an excellent job. Kindies will follow the student-free days next week like schools, so that those teachers also in community kindergartens can prepare for online learning for those children as well. But however, of course, long daycare centres, they will be open, but we ask parents to adhere to the strict isolation and staying in your home and suburbs conditions, and that really the essential workers and those workers required in their workplaces be the ones that may utilise those childcare and long daycare centres. We have been in constant contact daily with the industry. They are very happy with the position we have outlined here today. We have been negotiating with all stakeholders with regards to student-free days next week, and all stakeholders from PNCs to the non-government sector to the unions to all stakeholders in the education community are very happy with the outcome of our position that we're announcing today. In a nutshell, student-free days from Monday. Schools are open for essential workers and workers required in the workplace. Teachers will move to developing remote learning and online learning for students and all those learning materials for what potentially may lie ahead. We will cater for any high-risk workers that have concerns, and obviously vulnerable children will be catered for as well.
Hundreds of Australians are dobbing in members of the public to police for flouting the restrictions on social distancing. Businesses have already been caught out trying to bend the rules, while one woman back from a holiday was hit with a fine.
A beauty parlour in Janali reported to police after these messages were allegedly sent to clients. If you're craving a lash appointment, ASAP Genesis has a way. We're being a little bit naughty, so this underground lash salon must be kept on the down low. It was empty when officers turned up today. Police have upped their patrols after being given special powers to issue on-the-spot fines for people and businesses who ignore public health orders. Lake Macquarie woman Joanne McKennelly should have been in self-isolation after returning from Dubai. The 65-year-old was cautioned Monday, then fined yesterday after driving her husband to the mechanic. She told us this through the door.
Someone dobbed me in and I hadn't even been out of the yard. And that really hurts.
So I'd like to apologise to everybody and say we haven't put anybody at risk because she never got out of the car at any time.
I gave a clear warning that the time for cautioning people over not adhering to self-isolation was over.
Over the past 2 days, there have been around 600 calls to Crime Stoppers relating to coronavirus. That's on top of 200 complaints made prior to the tougher restrictions.
What we're saying to people, look, be neighbourly, but don't be vindictive. So Crime Stoppers is a tool that's there as a serious policing tool. Let's not abuse that.
This massage parlour, Diva on Sussex, is the first Sydney business to be caught in the act. The owner fined $5,000 and her 3 employees will pay $1,000 each. They won't be the last as the calls for concern keep coming in. Tiffany Genders.
Australia is tonight in uncharted territory. All mass gatherings are now banned in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic. The reaction has been swift. The Royal Easter Show cancelled, while NRL games from round 2 will be played without fans. The Prime Minister is also calling on the public to rethink overseas travel, saying if it's not essential, don't go.
Australia and New Zealand in a one-day cricket international without a crowd.
When you turn up to the game and there's no one around, yeah, that's unusual.
But it's about to become the new norm as the coronavirus shutdown kicks in, changing the way we live.
It has been recommended to us that we move to a position by Monday where we will be advising against organised, non-essential gatherings of persons of 500 people or greater.
The dramatic action forced on a Prime Minister by medical experts dealing with the greatest threat to our health in a century.
That, of course, doesn't include schools, it doesn't include university lectures, it doesn't mean getting on public transport or going to airports or things of that nature.
But everything else, sporting events, including NRL matches, concerts, festivals, are off limits.
Generally speaking, we're talking about a static gathering where people are together for a period of perhaps up to 2 hours is generally where you have a high risk of exposure.
Then there's Anzac Day, Vivid, and the Royal Easter Show, which has only ever been cancelled because of war and the Spanish flu in 1919.
Number one priority is the health and safety of our patrons, our stakeholders, our exhibitors. We're in a position where we can't move forward with the show. We can't guarantee their safety.
The shutters have also been pulled down on overseas travel. If it's not essential, forget it.
We now advise all Australians to reconsider your need to travel overseas at this time, regardless of your destination, age or health.
New South Wales today recorded a sharp spike in cases, 14 in 24 hours. That makes 92 in total. On the streets, the news of the lockdown has been greeted with mixed feelings.
It's not really fair, is it? Because there's only a couple of people who've got it, really.
Reduce the risk of spreading the virus.
It's just taking it a step too far. Like, you know, at the end of the day, it's a bit of a flu-like symptoms. More people have died of SARS.
And in the middle of this emergency, a lack of urgency. The weekend's NRL games will go ahead as planned with crowds. In Canberra, fans are turning up this evening as the Raiders take on the Titans.
We're diehard Raiders fans, so we'll still be here no matter what.
While the game's boss is in Townsville for the Cowboys versus the Broncos.
At the moment, we've got a full house tonight and we're looking forward to some rugby league.
And tomorrow afternoon, the Prime Minister will be in the stands at ANZ Stadium.
This is a matter of scaling our response. The fact that I would still be going on Saturday speaks not just to my passion for my beloved Sharks, it might be the last game I get to go to for a long time.
The opposition leader and Rabbits fan Anthony Albanese has decided to skip the game against the Sharks. Critics say the government is dragging its feet. The restrictions should come into effect immediately.
I implore them to look again and say that what we have done to date has not been good enough, fast enough.
But by next weekend, the NRL looks certain to play its games in empty stadiums behind closed doors.
When we get into the second week of our competition, our games will continue to proceed as planned, albeit with our stadiums will be closed to fans.
Let's go now to Damien Ryan outside the SCG this evening. Damo, cricket with no fans, it seems bizarre.
You better believe it, Georgie. The odd sound of bat and ball and a few shouts of how's that, that's what we're hearing at the SCG at the moment. Now, of course, if you want to get your football fix this weekend in the NRL, you better get yourself to your local grounds and support your teams because it'll be all over next week. Now, the AFL season actually kicks off next week as well. Thursday night, Carlton versus Richmond. Normally you get anything up to 100,000 people at the MCG, but not next week. Racing, well, Rosehill will allow punters in tomorrow. Caulfield, the gates will be closed. Extraordinary times, Georgie, for sure. I suspect really the only positive is that the sport is still on and you can watch it on television. Georgie?
Indeed you can. Damien Ryan, thank you. Let's go live now to Airlie Walsh at Sydney Olympic Park, the venue for the Royal Easter Show. Airlie, just describe the impact the cancellation's going to have.
Well, Georgie, this will hit hard. You're looking at $250 million worth of economic activity now gone. So tickets will need to be refunded. Contracts with vendors, they're going to have to be unwound. The carnival community, you know, people who run food trucks, the rides, the show bags, for many, this is their main source of income for the entire year. So this news will be devastating for that community. Devastating also, Georgie, for rural and remote communities right the way across the state, coming back off of a brutal couple of months.
They've been going through drought for so many years, and then you overlay that with the bushfires. They wanted to be at the show for their own mental health, and now we have to announce to them that that's not going to occur at all either.
So just awful news, Georgie, and once again, just to reiterate, for the first time, the Royal Easter Show will be cancelled because of a public health emergency for the first time since 1919.
Airlie Walsh, thank you very much for that. We have some breaking news now. Our political editor, Chris Uhlmann, joins us in the studio. And Chris, Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton has tested positive to coronavirus.
He has indeed, Georgie. Another extraordinary twist on an extraordinary day. And now, no doubt, questions will be asked about when the last time it was that he was in contact with other members of the Cabinet and whether or not they will have to self-isolate. That's on top of everything else that we saw today, because now Australia is essentially on a war footing. For the first time in our history, we are to have a national Cabinet that will be made up of the Premiers, Chief Ministers and Prime Minister. They will meet once a week. Already they have decided that all non-essential gatherings of over 500 will be banned from Monday. All overseas travel is being discouraged, and that's to try and slow the spread of the virus so that it doesn't overwhelm our health system. But this will have a profound effect on our economy. And the only thing that we can say in the weeks and months ahead is that life as we know it is about to change dramatically.
As you say, extraordinary times, Chris. Thank you very much for that.
Anzac Day services are the latest events to be axed.
Charlotte Maudlock is in Sydney for us this morning. Charlotte, despite being more than a month away, they've decided to pull the cord.
Yeah, that's right. Services across New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania and Western Australia have been cancelled because of the coronavirus outbreak. New South Wales RSL acting President Ray James has said that they made this decision based on their responsibility to the general public and also veterans. Keeping in mind that we know the aged are particularly at risk to COVID-19, it's highly unlikely, if not impossible, that we would have seen the situation recover enough in Australia for these events to go ahead, which is why they have made this call almost 5 weeks out from Anzac Day. Senator Jim Molan says that he thinks some smaller services should be able to proceed.
Normally I go to the Queanbeyan dawn service. There's a couple of hundred people go to that and many people watching. And then normally I would go to the War Memorial or up to Sydney or down to Melbourne to one of the big ones. I think if we're going to make a compromise on this, we make it on the big ones and we allow the smaller groups to have their commemorations in the local areas.
Today I want to announce that we will be putting into place a $17.5 million plan to protect our health heroes. So Minister Miles will talk a little bit more about that, but we raised it yesterday that we were looking at securing some hotels, especially for our workers that are going to be doing those long shifts and may not be able to go home to their loved ones because there may be a member of their family that is vulnerable. So I'll get Minister Miles to talk more about that. Can I absolutely endorse Mayor Tom Tate's call today to close 3 beaches, that being the Spit, Surfers Paradise and Coolangatta. He discussed this with me and I 100% endorse that. We have been giving warnings now for a long time to people and unfortunately they are not adhering by the social distancing. If we are really going to suppress this virus, we have to be making sure, need to make sure we are doing everything we possibly can to limit the spread. And the way you limit that spread is by social distancing and not having mass movement of people on our beaches. So I endorse that. I also had a call this morning from the chair of the RNA, David Thomas. And of course, you know, it was great sadness that he reported that the ECA would not be going ahead this year. I know my little niece burst into tears when she heard that. Can I say to all the children out there and the mums and dads that the ECA will be back next year, fingers crossed, bigger and better than before. And I know it's going to be really hard for a lot of families who look forward to it every year, but we are in a crisis situation at the moment, so we need to make sure that we are looking after everybody and stopping the spread.
Every day in life in Australia is different. You know, Australia commences stage 1 of a nationwide shutdown. So that means restaurants, clubs, pubs, licensed venues, gyms, all shutting up shop for the foreseeable future. In Victoria, they've closed schools across the state, bringing forward their school holidays to this week. Entertainment venues, casinos, places of worship. The rest of the country will follow this, but we're not sure when or in what cases.
Yeah, for how long? Let's go to 9 News reporter Chris O'Keefe for a breakdown. Chris, first of all, take us through the full list of closures that will be enforced from midday today.
Yeah, well, Belinda, it's quite widespread. Essentially, what the federal government and all the states have decided on is any place that's unnecessary for people to gather and linger has now been banned. So like you said, as of midday today, pubs, clubs, casinos, places of worship, churches, synagogues, mosques, cinemas, movie theatres, gyms, indoor sporting centres, so indoor cricket centres, indoor netball courts, things like that, all of them will need to be shut. Now, there are some things that are still open though, and I think this is important. Now, public transport is fine. Trains, buses, ferries, trams, all around the country will still run. Your office blocks, you can still go to work as long as your company says you can. And schools, well, there's a fair bit of confusion about that, but at this point, outside of Victoria, all school is on. New South Wales is saying, if you don't want to take your kids to school, you don't have to.
Chris, there is still a lot of confusion about shopping centres and retail. Things like hair and nail salons, shops like Myer and David Jones, how are they going to be affected?
They're not going to be affected. They are still open and they're still allowed to trade as usual. But Mark, as you know, the problem is that people just aren't going out and about shopping. I was only in the middle of Pitt Street the other day and I went through David Jones and Myer and I was about the only person in there. at about 5:30 in the afternoon in the middle of the week. Now, in the middle of Sydney, that would usually be teeming with people, but there are store attendants not knowing who to serve because there is nobody to serve. So there won't be necessarily restrictions on these businesses yet in terms of people being able to access them or having enforced bans or anything like that. But what you will see, these businesses will probably just, a lot of them anyway, will just shut the doors because they haven't got the customers coming in to justify all the overheads that they're forking out for.
Now, the first time the Prime Minister went on the front foot about this, Chris, he was talking a lot about, putting money into tradies and that sort of stuff. What happens to tradies? The people out there are building homes. People are out there are doing renovations right now. Tradies are out there on work sites. What happens to them? Do they shut down?
Well, they're supposed to keep going. There's business as usual for construction sites, but this is the tradies and the building game sort of copped it to begin with because the supply chain broke down. Now, you've got to understand, like, a lot of the prefabricated materials, concretes, joints and those things come from China. So when China shut down, the access to the building materials became very difficult. So you've seen delays on a lot of these building sites. And of course, when schools start to shut, and if you in New South Wales and Victoria, when people are being told to keep your kids home, a lot of these tradies will have no choice but to stay at home and look after the children. So if you're in the middle of a reno or you're trying to get a kitchen done or that sort of thing, you can expect some pretty significant delays because you will just not be able to get access to that labour, whether they're at home looking after the kids or because the tradies themselves simply can't find the material to finish the job. It's been a big problem for the last month or so.
Yeah, and on schools, Chris, I mean, it's quite confusing for parents out there. I mean, Victoria and the ACT, they'll close schools from tomorrow, going against the PM's advice to remain open. So we're likely to see other states follow suit, do you think? I mean, here in New South Wales, the Premier said they'll remain open, but they're encouraging parents to stay at home with the kids if they can.
Yeah, I don't think you will see the other states follow suit because the overwhelming health advice from the chief medical officers of every single state and Dr. Brendan Murphy, the Commonwealth Chief Medical Officer, is schools should remain open. Now, Victoria's...
The first time in a century, the Queensland border is closed in an effort to stem the spread of coronavirus. Roads connecting our states are now littered with police, checking all drivers have a reason to enter the Sunshine State.
Welcome to Queensland, where it's locked down one day, shut down the next. From midnight, drivers stopped at the border, asked where they're going and what they're doing, as Queensland became the latest Australian state to close its borders from the coast to the Northern Territory.
Is it a smart thing to do, though?
Yep, definitely. I think the government should be doing more.
This is good. We need to do this.
Police with no masks, no gloves, at times flouting the 1.5 social distancing rules, handling licences and car doors. As the new rules kicked in, the traffic banked up to 7 kilometres in the morning peak.
We obviously expect there's going to be delays, and there are delays.
The border closure is to stop any unnecessary travel into Queensland before the usually busy holiday season and to stop further interstate spread of coronavirus. And late this afternoon, police and this man with what looked to be homemade Queensland number plates pulled over. His car searched.
This is not a short-term thing. People have to be prepared for this to happen for quite some time.
Drivers who live in New South Wales and work in Queensland or vice versa can apply for an exemption. So too emergency crews, health workers, truck drivers, government employees and for some people on compassionate grounds. The main thoroughfares, the Gold Coast Highway and the M1 are heavily patrolled, but as our cameraman found out, many of the other streets aren't, and there are ways in with no checkpoint. While New South Wales remains open, a shutdown of our borders is yet another weapon in the state's arsenal if our infection curve doesn't start to flatten out, and soon.
If the spread continues, New South Wales will have to take immediate action to go further.
Lizzie Pearl, 9 News.
Melbourne Storm's Josh Addo-Carr and his relatives, along with South Sydney's Latrell Mitchell, on a weekend camping trip at Mitchell's property on the New South Wales north coast. If the NRL wanted to convince everyone it was capable of keeping several hundred players under wraps, these images have shot holes in that idea.
How'd he miss it?
The two quickly said sorry after an outcry when the photos and videos were published on Addo-Carr's Instagram account.
Firstly, I'd like to apologise for my actions this weekend.
Nothing was intentional or deliberate.
Latrell Mitchell, firstly I just want to apologise on my actions this weekend. I wasn't here to break any rules or just hurt anyone. We're not being selfish. Look, I couldn't turn down the brothers.
The apologies came after the NRL slammed the pair, saying the images were both disappointing and an unacceptable breach of health orders. The Newcastle Knights fullback, Tyrone Roberts-Davis, also appeared in one of the photographs, but the club said he bumped into the others when he was out riding his motorbike at South West Rocks. The breaches come with the 16 NRL clubs due to begin training in just a week, ahead of the season relaunch on the 28th of May.
It's disappointing when anyone breaches restrictions, but the behaviour of individuals shouldn't interfere with a holistic assessment of any proposals we might get in the future.
The news could not have come at a worse time for the National Rugby League as it circulates its draft biosecurity plans. The promise is that they'll go further than the current restrictions, but the weekend's breaches show why it still needs to convince the clubs, and more importantly governments, that it can pull it off. David Mark, ABC News.
There's been a dramatic arrest at Bondi Beach where a man was pinned to the ground by 2 police officers. He was spotted walking through an area cordoned off due to the public health measures. The 54-year-old allegedly became aggressive when officers tried to speak to him. He was arrested and then taken to Waverley Police Station.
Queensland Police are yet to confirm if anyone was fined. We do know that hundreds of people were given move-on notices yesterday evening, and looking at some of that vision, it's clear to see that the majority of people weren't practicing social distancing rules. Many weren't 1.5 metres apart, pretty much in clusters there, overlooking the surf break there and the sunset, taking a lot of risks to see a sunset there yesterday afternoon. The Queensland government did warn prior to these restrictions lifting that they would be back in place if people continue to flout the law. We do know on Saturday 32 infringements were issued to the tune of $1,334. Overall, though, the state government was quite happy with people. That was on Saturday, though. Then on Sunday, it was a very different story. We are likely to get an update from the government later this morning as to how many people were fined, but many are likening this law to scenes we saw at Bondi a short while ago. So many Queenslanders waking up today to a public holiday. Today, again, will be a test for crowd numbers. Potentially, the chilly weather will keep people away.
10 people have been arrested at an anti-lockdown protest in Melbourne. Victoria is the last state to relax its tight restrictions as it deals with an outbreak at the Cedar Meats abattoir. The demonstrators are pushing several conspiracy theories, including the spread of coronavirus being linked to 5G technology. Medical experts leading the fight against the disease have dismissed their theories as unsupported and dangerous.
There's unfortunately a lot of very silly misinformation out there. There is absolutely no evidence about 5G doing anything in the coronavirus space. I haven't, unfortunately, received a lot of communication from these conspiracy theorists myself. It is complete nonsense.
It's incredibly disappointing that people would be protesting, somehow seeking to suggest that we do not have a pandemic, but they just need to go and turn on the news and look at what's happening in the United States at the moment, in the United Kingdom, in so many parts of Europe. Those people know that this pandemic is not fake news.
Good evening. Anger over ongoing lockdowns has flared on the streets of Sydney and Melbourne. Small but fiery protests ending in clashes with police. This was the scene in Melbourne today. Officers tackling people to the ground as tension spilled over. Tegan Doling has more.
Good afternoon, Angie. Melbourne CBD has reopened after tensions boiled over at a protest at Parliament House. More than half a dozen people were arrested.
Get your hands behind your back! Stop resisting!
And police were forced to use capsicum spray to break up the unruly crowd.
You've been told! Move back!
Hundreds gathered of all ages to protest against the restriction laws. On doing so, breaking those exact rules, and fines were issued. One man who claimed to be a former police officer echoing the crowd's claims COVID-19 is a conspiracy.
And we got sick from somebody eating a bat. Well, no one's ever eaten a bat before.
We think that the restrictions are really unreasonable considering we've had such low cases of COVID-19.
The government has slammed the protesters for not only putting themselves at risk, but the wider community too.
Well, the vision has now gone viral, not just here in Australia, but across the world. And the woman in the centre of it all is mother of three, Renee Altacritti. Now, I have spoken to Renee today off camera. She says she's still very shaken by what happened yesterday and has had very little sleep. Yesterday, Renee, along with others, were involved in what has been described as a peaceful protest. However, the protest was not authorised and it breached a number of COVID-19 restrictions that are currently in place here in New South Wales. Police have released a statement this morning which states Renee was spoken to and told to move on. She told officers she was exercising. After she refused to give officers her details and would not comply with their direction to move on, police arrested her. However, she resisted and a struggle ensued.
That lady was approached by police, asked to provide some particulars, so a very simple process could then take place. And for whatever reason she chose to become quite hysterical, was removed to the police station. The child was taken off her, and at the police station again for whatever reason she then chose to provide some particulars and was released from the police station soon after.
Now, protesters returned to New South Wales Parliament House today, some angry at the treatment of Renee yesterday. Police arrived shortly after and the crowd quickly dispersed. Renee Altacritti has now been fined $1,000 and the Deputy Commissioner of New South Wales Police has said that he will review the arrest vision.
The protesters certainly don't speak for everyone. Some of Australia's top medical experts are warning Scott Morrison's plan to pull us out of lockdown is too quick. Political correspondent Tim Lester has more. Tim, they say if a fresh outbreak is triggered, we'll be forced right back into isolation.
Some of the country's leading disease experts have told 7 News weekend scenes of crowded shopping centres cannot continue, and if they do, new outbreaks will delay by months the government's 3-stage easing of restrictions. That's due to finish in July.
Everything would have to line up perfectly and we'd have to have no major outbreaks for it to be at that timescale.
Others argue the road out beginning in May might be needed for the economy, but is ambitious in terms of stopping the virus.
I would have been saying no sooner than the beginning of June, in that it would give particularly Victoria and New South Wales time to do their extended testing, which they are doing.
We're in new territory here. We need to be really careful at this point and make sure that all our surveillance systems and all our response systems are in place.
Their comments follow this. Shopping that looks all the world like the Boxing Day sales, enough for the Chief Medical Officer to call on Australians to take more personal responsibility when finding crowds.
Don't go in, leave, come back later. But if people don't do it, we could get widespread community transmission again, that second wave that we've talked about.
Australians keen to get out and about are doing just that. COVID-19's incubation period, up to 14 days, means we simply won't know whether these early days relaxing the measures are okay until we're almost in June.
New South Wales residents have had to wait, but they will get their first taste of freedom on Friday. The state's Premier today announced the easing of some restrictions, but has warned people not to be complacent. Chris Marr has more.
Well, Angela, they are the small steps in the easing of the coronavirus restrictions, but they come with a warning. Any spike in the illness could see them quickly reversed. The Premier announced the limited wind back of some restrictions from Friday, saying they've come about because of the high rates of testing and the small number of cases. Only 2 extra tested positive in the latest results. The key changes allow for outdoor gatherings of 10 people. The same number will be allowed to sit at one time in cafes and restaurants.
I think there'll only be a small proportion of restaurants and cafes that will find it viable to have up to 10 people, but it's a start.
Up to 5 visitors will be allowed in homes at one time, although kids will be included in that number. Weddings can have 10 guests. 10 worshippers at a time will be allowed in churches. Outdoor gym equipment can be used with caution. Outdoor pools open with restrictions. Gladys Berejiklian says social distancing rules will still apply and the virus will be closely tracked.
There is a risk, given the size of our population and the number of cases, that we may need to go backwards sometimes. I hope that's not the case.
Right across Australia, mums have been treated to a day of pampering. The usual Mother's Day get-together looked rather different this year, nowhere more than in Victoria, where a face-to-face catch-up was illegal. Blake Johnson has the story.
Victorian families faced some of the toughest ongoing restrictions on Mother's Day, with no exemptions allowed for family visits. Despite this, florists were still doing a huge trade, with queues out the door a regular sight. Social distancing in store has to be followed by social distancing between relatives.
My partner's mom is in Melbourne, so I get to drop these off at her door, social distancing style.
Nursing homes can't allow big family groups in, so a Mother's Day catch-up for great-grandmother Asunta is done with an iPad.
Who wants to talk? Me or you? Happy Mother's Day. Thank you.
The Victorian government is waiting until a state of emergency ends tomorrow and for the results of a testing blitz before deciding on what restrictions to relax.
The only people that can't visit their mothers today on Mother's Day across Australia are criminals locked in jail and the good people of Victoria.
We don't have a lockdown. I know it's been described in those terms by some individuals.
New South Wales.
Barack Obama has unleashed on President Trump, slamming his response to the coronavirus crisis in a leaked phone call. It comes as a disturbing new trend emerges in the fight against the disease in the US. Ashley Mullaney reports.
Barack Obama made the remarks in a private conversation with past administration staff, but his criticism of Donald Trump soon went public. Voicing his concerns America was becoming too selfish, tribal and divided under the current leadership, and offering a withering assessment of Donald Trump's handling of COVID-19.
It would have been bad even with the best of governments. It has been an absolute chaotic disaster when that mindset of what's in it for me and to heck with everybody else, when that mindset is operationalized in our government.
President Trump has criticised Obama too for, quote, leaving the shelves bare when it came to protective equipment for medical workers. This as America's death toll inches toward 80,000, with a worrying new trend showing cases of a rare toxic shock-like illness in young patients with coronavirus. At least 73 children have been infected with the illness in New York alone. 3 have died, a 5-year-old, 7-year-old and teenager.
One of the few rays of good news was young people weren't affected. We're not so sure that that is the fact anymore.
Several cases have also been reported in the UK and Europe, but doctors say the majority of children who are infected with COVID-19 only develop mild symptoms.
In the next few hours, Boris Johnson will reveal Britain's roadmap out of lockdown. The rollout of a tracking app similar to ours will play a key part in the recovery effort. It's unclear if he'll nominate a date for restrictions to ease. Police are already worried about complacency with locals heading outdoors as the weather warms up. Despite
my son's with me. I am not under arrest for anything. Why is she under arrest? You need to get your. Why is she under arrest? Can you grab the chest? Can you grab the chest, please? Immediately. Why is she under arrest? Come on. Why is she under arrest? Why is she under arrest? Why? Why is she under arrest? Why is she under arrest? Prove it. Prove why she's under arrest. Stop. Prove why she's under arrest. Where is the order? You are not getting the order. Victor! 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 everyone, you choose her. I'm passing that to her. Why? She's got a baby. She's got a fucking baby. You don't touch the baby. Leave her alone. Leave her alone. What are you proving? You're not men. Out of everybody, they grab a woman with a child. Out of everybody, this is fucking shit. This is shit. Out of everybody, they grab a woman. She's not done anything wrong. She's not done anything wrong. Come on, be reasonable. Come on, let her go. She's done nothing wrong. Hold her boy. What has she done? Look what you're doing, man. What has she done? What has she done? Calm down. Calm down. I'm ground. Come on. I have nothing to offend you. You're scaring my son. What offense has she done? Move away from me and my son. Move away. What has she done? Look. Me and my son. She hasn't done anything. I shall fucking move. No, you're not. I don't know his son. That is his mother. He needs to be with his mother. Come on.
I just stay back.
Oh my goodness. I'm listening to you. Oh my goodness. I'm going to get a fucking baby from your mother. Give me the kid. Give me the kid. Give me the kid. Give me the kid, please. You'll feel safer with me. Can I just have the kid? No. The kid is not going to feel safer with the police. Give the kid to somebody, please. No. Just give it to somebody. Look, we can't just give it to any random people. Look what this represents to the child. You've taken his child. Yes, he'll be coming back with us. This is what you signed up for? Come on, guys.
She was arrested in dramatic fashion while protesting coronavirus lockdowns. But tonight, a new twist has emerged against a Chipping Norton mother. The cosmetic nurse has now been reported to police for flouting our quarantine laws.
You're scaring my son. What offence has she done? Move away from me and my son. Move away.
A mother protesting her rights, arrested and ripped from her son. The screams of her scared 4-year-old in the CBD heard near and far as the video circulated online.
I just remember seeing his legs waving in the air. Screaming. I was obviously trying to resist at this stage.
Renee Alticritti was fined $1,000 for not obeying social distancing measures yesterday. Last night, the 36-year-old mother had them in mind as she lashed out at police in an online conference.
No apologies from anyone as yet from any of the disgusting actions that happened to me.
Her fight for her rights has now gone all the way to the top.
If this woman had have given police her details at the scene, she would have been given a ticket and would have left with her son, but she refused to do that. She caused this.
I didn't notice good social distancing at those protests, and you know, breaching those health rules is what concerns me the most.
But the drama didn't stop there. Police have confirmed a report has been received about Renee Alticritti's beauty business in Chipping Norton still operating during coronavirus restrictions. That report has been handed here to Liverpool Police. Miss Alticritti declined an interview today and then engaged lawyers to threaten media to keep their distance. One journalist accidentally run over and is now in hospital with an injured foot. Zara James, 9 News.
Siamo alla vigilia del 25 aprile e occorre essere uniti contro le dittature e uniti nella verità. Non facciamo di questa l'aula della menzogna. Non il 26 febbraio, ma il 9 marzo, la scienza qua evocata diceva che il virus era poco più che un'influenza. Quella scienza è quella a cui si è ispirato questo governo. È detto, è stato detto, è documentato, è stato detto, non mentite. Allora dite la verità, non fate di questa l'aula della menzogna. Almeno qui si applichi il principio di Giambattista Vico, verum ipsum factum. E allora avete sentito e avete dato i numeri, li voglio dare anch'io, no Dattis, no Pagani, non dite anche qui 25.000 morti, non è vero, non usate i morti per retorica e per terrorismo. I dati dell'Istituto Superiore della Sanità dicono che il 96,3% sono morti per altre patologie. Esattamente i dati, i numeri, dice questo. È la verità, è la verità.
Colleghi.
Valli a leggere,
Collega.
esattamente così, li ho letti tutti. Il 60% sono morti per altre patologie, detto dall'Istituto Superiore della Sanità. Se non lo sai, studia.
Collega Sgarbi, si rivolga. Collega Sgarbi. Collega Trizzino. Collega Trizzino. Collega Sgarbi, si rivolga alla Presidenza.
Sono i contagiati. E mentre l'Italia è la zona rossa, qui tutti erano senza mascherine. Oggi Basini è accusato perché la deve portare per forza. Siete ridicoli. Non l'avete portata fino all'altro ieri. È esattamente così. In Germania economia, sanità e scuola il 4 maggio funzioneranno perfettamente. Siamo uno Stato con minori diritti nell'Europa. Germania ha dato prove di forza e di risposta giusta. Noi qui siamo umiliati ancora una volta dalla Germania, anche nella malattia. Abbiamo chiuso il 60% delle imprese. Io do dei dati, caro Trizzino, valli a verificare. Allora, è chiaro che io fui il primo a chiedere la chiusura del Parlamento. Oggi siamo qua, tutti mascherati. L'altra volta c'era soltanto dell'unto, c'erano pochissimi dall'osso, erano pochi che portavano la mascherina. Oggi si è additati se non la si porta. Ebbene, proprio perché la verità è la cosa più importante, diamo i numeri reali, non dobbiamo mentire. Ci sono certamente dei dati forti, li leggo anche qua, Trizzino, il 56% in Lombardia, il 14% in Emilia, l'8% in Piemonte, il 5% in Veneto. Non possiamo immaginare di applicare delle norme unitarie con zone così disparate di epidemia. E allora dico, almeno qui diciamo la verità. Misuriamoci con la Germania, siamo uniti nella liberazione contro l'ipocrisia e le menzogne, contro le falsificazioni, contro i falsi numeri che vengono dati per terrorizzare gli italiani. I 25.000 morti, lo diceva il professor Bassetti, sono morti di infarto, di cancro, di altre patologie. Non usiamoli per umiliare l'Italia, non usiamoli per dare ai cittadini false notizie. Date i numeri, controllateli, e sfido in giurì d'onore te, Trizzino, a guardare i numeri.
Collega Sgarbi, si rivolga alla Presidenza.
Ho semplicemente detto che i numeri li danno tutti, ma non diano numeri falsi. Non sono morte in Italia 25.000 persone di coronavirus. Non è vero. È un modo per terrorizzare gli italiani e imporre una dittatura del consenso. È ridicolo.
It's mid-morning at St Vincent's Hospital's coronavirus testing clinic.
Have a seat, my dear. Have you had a nasal swab before? I have.
Monique Isaacs is feeling healthy but is getting tested for COVID-19.
It makes your eyes water, doesn't it?
Take a moment.
Yep. I suffer from asthma. It's been getting worse over the last few weeks. So I had quite a bad attack last Sunday. So yeah, it's just peace of mind.
This swab test will identify if the virus is present, whether or not the patient is showing symptoms. With the government securing a further 10 million swab kits, this test is what most Australians will experience.
It's very quick. There's a momentary feeling of discomfort. Somebody said to me they didn't realise their nose went back that far.
Once the swab has been collected, it's taken to be examined at a lab.
14.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
The standard test takes somewhere between 6 to 12 hours to process, with patients usually notified of their result within 72 hours.
This is a classic positive COVID-19 curve.
There's also a more rapid version of the swab test that can turn around results in about an hour.
We have a very selective criteria for using the rapid test. It's used predominantly in cases where we need fast triaging of patients from certain settings, including from emergency to intensive care, and we've also been using them for transplant patients as well.
The concern with the rapid tests is that you may get more false negatives. So if you're trying to make a diagnosis of COVID and it's in a patient with symptoms who's unwell, and you really do not want to miss a diagnosis.
It's this balance between speed and accuracy that medical experts and governments around the world are trying to get right with coronavirus testing. In late March, the regulator, the Therapeutic Goods Administration, sped up the approval of a number of rapid blood test kits for use in Australia. These tests screen a tiny amount of blood or plasma for COVID-19 antibodies in as little as 15 minutes.
What these tests do is to detect antibodies in a patient's blood.
The Doherty Institute in Melbourne has spent the last few weeks assessing the performance of these rapid blood test kits.
We were asked to perform what's called a post-market validation study. One thing that is extremely clear at the moment is that these tests have limited, if any, role in the acute diagnosis of COVID-19.
The Institute's findings are yet to be finalised, but it's clear that some claims made by companies now selling these tests in Australia aren't accurate. 730 has found tests being advertised online as ideal diagnostic tests that allow you to gain a diagnosis quickly.
There's a lot of these kits flooding the market, and I'm sure there's very big variations in quality across those kits. Probably getting half a dozen a day from companies with no track record of making diagnostics, selling rapid test kits for COVID-19, and they have no certifications, no validation studies to back up the use of their kits.
Trent Warburton's company, TrendBio, is one of the TGA-approved suppliers of these tests.
I think at the moment, we should be cautious, and I think suppliers should be conservative rather than gung-ho about the way that they promote the use of these kits.
A different type of blood testing is underway at this lab at Westmead Hospital in Western Sydney. Here, scientists are also looking for COVID-19 antibodies, but the testing takes longer and is considered far more accurate.
Antibodies, if they're present in the patient's blood, will bind to the virus that we put on the slide. We then look down the microscope and we add a reagent that actually highlights the binding of antibodies to the virus, and we can see that under the microscope.
Pathologists here are tracing virus transmission, as the test can identify people who may have had COVID-19 but shown no symptoms. It can also give pathologists an idea of roughly when someone was infected.
We're actually able to time when that person might have had their infection, whether it was a week, 2 weeks, or a few months ago.
Matthew O'Sullivan says the next project for the lab is something called serosurvey testing, where they examine random blood samples to see how widespread COVID-19 actually is. It'll give authorities a clearer picture of whether cases are going undiagnosed.
It gives us a very good idea of the actual overall incidence of this disease in the community, and tells us whether or not the numbers of cases that we're seeing based on the swab tests is a good reflection of how many cases are actually occurring.
For For now, the government's advice is that swab testing is the best diagnosis method available.
Do want people who have even the mildest symptoms to come and be tested. It's really important that if these testing strategies are to work, that we keep testing, and we keep testing those patients with symptoms so that we keep seeing a large number of people come through to inform us about exactly what is going on within the population so that we don't miss cases.
I mean, we just got here, and we have more than enough food to get us through the winter, right? Why go back? But there was that ant that stood up to me.
Yeah, but we can forget about him.
Yeah, it was just one ant. Ooh, one ant.
Yeah, you're right. It's just one ant.
Yeah, boss. They're puny.
Puny? Say, let's pretend this grain is a puny little ant. Did that hurt?
Nope.
Well, how about this one?
Are you kidding?
Well, how about this? You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. All you ants, ideas are very dangerous things. You are mindless, soil-shoving losers. Put on this earth to serve us.
You're wrong, Hopper. Ants are not meant to serve grasshoppers. I've seen these ants do great things. And year after year, they somehow manage to pick food for themselves and you. So who is the weaker species? Ants don't serve grasshoppers. It's you who need us. We're a lot stronger than you say we are. And you know it, don't you?
Well, Princess. Hopper, I hate to interrupt, but, you ants stay back! Oh, this was such a bad idea.
You see, Hopper, nature has a certain order. The ants pick the food, the ants keep the food, and the grasshoppers leave.
What do you think about those ants, Lucy? Well, I know if some parasitic force was stealing all my tacos, I'd do the same thing. Those grasshoppers wouldn't have any ankles left. Welcome to another day of COVID mind control, brought to you by the powers that be. Thought I'd show that ant part to kind of let people know that they can stop all this stuff going on, but they have to realize what's going on and to some extent fight back. And fighting back today, crazily as it sounds, means leaving your house and doing things you want to do. This is the new big thing of our times. Well, you can't even leave your house? Screw those cops. Yeah, Lucy don't care. Especially as it becomes comes more and more to light that the dangerousness of this so-called virus is exactly what I said it was about 2 months ago. Look back through my videos. The first corona stuff I started posting was about 2 months ago. And within a few days, I was like, looks like about a 0.1% death rate max based on everything I'm seeing. I also said it looks actually not even as bad as past years. And a lot of this is starting to come out now, finally. I don't know what takes everyone so long. Reason.com came out with a story on how the LA County antibody tests suggest the fatality rate for COVID-19, which stands for Corona or Certificate of Vaccination ID, is much lower than people feared. It says in the article, in contrast with the current crude case fatality rate of about 4.5%, she said, this is the LA County person, the study suggests that 0.1% to 0.2% of people infected by the virus will die, which would make Certificate of Vaccination ID 19 only somewhat more deadly than the seasonal flu, which is exactly what I've been saying for months. And another article had pretty much the most important chart related to all this stuff that if anyone looked at it would realize that this is a scamdemic. The article is called, Is Amnesia a Symptom of Certificate of Vaccination ID 19? He says he asks about the amnesia because just 3 years ago, the US experienced one of its most severe influenza outbreaks in recent memory. I am talking about the 2017-2018 influenza that, according to the American Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, which, by the way, is a private organization, it's not even a government organization, and it's another arm of the Bill Gates sort of evil empire, was associated with 45 million illnesses, 21 million medical visits, 810,000 hospitalizations. By September 2018, the Communist News Network announced that as many as 80,000 were dead for reasons associated with the outbreak. The number of flu cases that year in the US alone was about 18 times higher than the current number of novel or new coronavirus cases worldwide, 2.5 million so far. The number of hospitalized American patients were more than 4 times higher than those who has been hospitalized in the USA with coronavirus symptoms, which is about 200,000 to date. The fatalities hospitalized ratio that year was around 0.1, about the same ratio we saw in northern Italy last month. And if all of this isn't enough, the number of American fatalities in 2017-2018 was more than 3 times the deaths currently associated with the Certificate of Vaccination ID 19. So strange that chart isn't anywhere on the mainstream media. Doesn't look all that deadly or dangerous, does it? In fact, so far, it's far less than 2017-2018, where you probably didn't even hear about it. And you probably didn't hear about it because that's fairly normal. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people die from influenza-like symptoms. 2017-18 was definitely higher than a lot of the previous years, but you just didn't even hear about it because it wasn't part of the agenda at the time. This one is much, much less dangerous and deadly. And not just hearing about it, the entire world has changed because of it. And a complete financial collapse, crisis, lockdown, and bankrupting of virtually everyone in the world has begun, which is what I've been talking about for the last 10 years. They just use the Certificate of Vaccination ID, also known as COVID, as just a reason, even though it had nothing at all to do with what's going on. In the oil market, this was all planned and destined to happen. Complete financial collapse. I said that for the last 10 years, and I said it would happen right around now. I don't have a crystal ball or anything, but it was just obvious that this was going to happen. And there's so many lies, which of course the UN director is trying to tell everyone not to spread.
The world faces an unprecedented threat. The COVID-19 pandemic has rapidly covered the globe. It has spread suffering, disrupted billions of lives, and endangered the global economy. COVID-19 is menacing the whole of humanity, and so the whole of humanity must fight back. Individual country responses are not going to be enough. Wealthy countries with strong health systems are buckling under the pressure. But now the virus is arriving in countries already in the midst of humanitarian crises caused by conflicts, natural disasters, and climate change. These are places where people who have been forced to flee their homes because of bombs, violence, or floods are living under plastic sheets in fields or crammed into refugee camps or informal settlements. They do not have homes in which to socially distance or self-isolate.
Facebook's cracking down on basically showing all the lies in the mainstream media. Like in the UK, here's the UK health minister, I believe. Minister, it's a religion, it's a cult, it's actually a death cult. Talking about how 10,000 people die every month in senior homes anyway, and then he goes on to talk about, again, of course, a super sad, tragic case, guys. A 13-year-old kid has died from the certificate of vaccination ID. There's just one problem. This is the same kid they've been using numerous times, there might even be dozens now, who's apparently has got the worst luck ever. He dies all the time in various different countries.
There's one other thing and one other change I want to make, which is giving people the right to say goodbye. One of the important things that care homes do is support people at the end of their life. Sadly, even in normal times, each month, about 10,000 people die in care homes. As a father of a 13-year-old myself, the reports of Ishmael dying aged 13 without a parent at his bedside made me weep. And the sight of his coffin being lowered into a grave without a member of his family present was too awful. The reports of Ishmael dying aged 13.
So basically everything you're seeing on the mainstream media, which you should not be watching, I've been saying this for years, some people still do, it's amazing. And it's basically a form of magic. And just like the 2012 Olympic opening ceremonies, that was also a ritual, basically a satanic ritual that they used to begin to do their spell. And you might notice everyone talks about this stuff like it's a spell. Donald Trump has said this horrible, horrible spell.
In this horrible period, this horrible, dark period where this monster came and worked its horrible, horrible spell over the world.
And even this, I guess he's some sort of criminal in New York, name of Cuomo. I don't know who he is, but he's been lying and lying about everything for quite a while here. Even saying how they're burying bodies on Hart Island, like they've been doing for the last 100 years and nothing's changed. But he doesn't use the word spell, he used the word beast all over the place. The headline is, "The beast can rise up again if the economy is opened too quickly." And he goes on to say, "We can control the beast. Yes, but the beast is still alive. We did not kill the beast, and the beast can rise up again." very much like what they tell children in little horror stories, right? Or even in the 2012 Olympics, they had this beast rise up with what looks like a needle in its hand, spurting out vaccines. And even Bill Gates, maybe I'm going to call him Kill Gates from now on. In 2015, Kill Bill put out his summer reading list. And on the list, the top book on the pile that he has in front of him for his fake propaganda photo is How to Lie with Statistics. He's not even hiding it. Some of the other books that he recommended, one's called Hyperbole and a Half, which, if you just take the title, means how to do more than even exaggerate something. How to incredibly, hyperbole is like the biggest exaggeration. How to do even more than that. That's on his reading list. And he also has a book called The Magic of Reality. And that's something I've been talking about here, is they are trying to, basically, using magical type things, change the world and how everyone's perception of the world. And that's what we're seeing today. And speaking of hyperbole and a half and how to lie with statistics, that's exactly what Bill Gates is doing with all these things. We just showed, even the LA County said it looks like it's nothing out of the ordinary. And we just showed the chart showing this is actually far less, way less, like way, way, way less than the flu influenza season in just 2 years ago. Or maybe, yeah, 2 years ago now. Very much like someone very similar to Bill Gates, or Kill Gates, named Al Gore. Remember him? And he did his little Netflix documentary, just like Bill Gates, and talked about how here's a politician, Al Gore, knows nothing about anything. Same as Bill Gates. He's a computer guy. He knows nothing about health or vaccines. Well, he knows he wants to depopulate the world, but he doesn't know anything about health or vaccines or anything. So Al Gore, a politician, said, I just put a chart together. Wow, Al. He also said he invented the internet, by the way. Guy's a serial liar, sociopath. And Al did his thing. He rose up on his little forklift, showing people how high the chart goes. We're all gonna die. Everything's gonna boil over. There's not gonna be any snow left by 2010, or something like that, anywhere in the world. Don't know if you noticed, back where I'm from, it's still snowing, and it's like April. No, just like this scam, the exact opposite is actually happening. The world's actually getting cooler. And might get a lot cooler if some of these people who watch sun activity are right. A lot of people are saying the sun activity follows certain patterns. And gee, what do you think's the biggest impact on whether it's hot or not on Earth? What one thing do you think might have the most influence? It might be that thing. Yeah. No, you're crazy. Have you not listened to Greta and Leonardo DiCaprio? He's really handsome. And they say it's because we drive around in too many SUVs while Leonardo DiCaprio has yachts and jets. So just like with the global warming scam, Bill Gates is doing it with this one. And this goes even way bigger than just a little scam that Kill Bill's working on. This is, at the highest levels, a massive magic spell and also a ritual of indoctrination, basically. It's an initiation ritual. And I've said a few times here on this channel that I love TrueStream Media. If you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to it. And I'll play just a few minutes. It's about 12 minutes long. I won't play the whole thing. Maybe I'll play like 5 minutes, just so you can get the gist of what they're talking about. And if you want to watch the rest, we'll have the link to it down below, and I highly recommend you do.
Numbers of people who have had their lives disrupted, losing their jobs, losing their income, even losing. It certainly is unprecedented in the impact that it's had around the world. Thanks for joining us. I know we're surrounded by uncertainty. It feels like everything is changing.
Julian Huxley once wrote that the basic elements in cultural transmission and transformation are psychological. This is how we change. Since time immemorial, high rituals have been performed to transform reality. Ritual, a spiritual psychodrama of conscious, deliberate actions taken to facilitate change. Changes to the whole of the environment people exist in, starting with the mental landscape of the people themselves, the place where our reality is first born a dream. Artist Sharon Devlin once bluntly described the true purpose of ritual as being a method to alter one's mind. It's a sacred drama in which you are the audience as well as the participant, and the purpose of it is to activate parts of the mind that are not activated by everyday activity, she said. The mechanics of change through mechanism, a rhythm to sync to, merge and flow with, a magnetic draw drawing one down the path toward transmutation. Rituals are vehicles driving home those ideas. The information, the data, the symbols, which upon transmission create the language by which new society members communicate after they are initiated. This new language imparts a new understanding through definitions the ritual generates, meaning pegged to signposts of its own self-referential process, even if the original purpose gets lost in the repetition of action. A ritual initiation introduces and inducts one into the way, a new way of life or worldview, a program to guide beliefs and actions, enabling the initiate to become a full and true member of the new society. Note that ritual is not always a conscious action. Not everyone partaking in a ritual is always made explicitly aware that they are participants. And yet still, new patterns of thought, of significance, are drummed in, conscious or not.
Ladies and gentlemen, this commercial is going to use subliminal advertising.
An initiation ritual typically involves 3 stages. See if any of this sounds familiar to you.
Because this is going to be transformative.
First, isolation for purification. The initiate is separated from the mundane. Did you know mundane means of the world?
Your school has been canceled, social events have been postponed.
The initiate is largely removed from the otherwise familiar persons, places, and things one is used to, in order to be cleared of them.
Stay home. Protect yourself. Protect our system. Stay home. Everyone must stay at home. We have to stay home because if we don't, stay home, stay safe.
Detached and insulated. Purged. Purified.
An extraordinary time when we have to stay home. We have to stay physically distant from the ones we love. How we can change our day-to-day life to avoid direct face-to-face contact. Try and keep yourself away from people as much as possible.
An essential element of this separation from one's typical environment is the suspension of the normal rules of living that one is used to. The normal way.
Normality, as it was before, will not come back.
Much of the initiate's senses will be commanded and regulated at this time. In other words, the majority of what the initiate sees, hears, smells, touches, and tastes, if directly related, is deliberately controlled. These senses may be bombarded, modified, limited, or deprived. But regardless, perceptions and experiences are ultimately overseen by the high priests and priestesses directing the ritual's performance.
Yes, what this is a worldwide initiation ritual that they're trying to get people to all adhere to, and they've done a very good job. They've got billions of people doing it, all going into solitary, hiding in their houses, making massive changes to their lives, mostly in the forms of bankrupting everyone, getting them to all wear masks. These are all part of initiation rituals, and they're doing it over the entire world right now. Now, some people have not fallen for the spell, and many of those people have begun taking to the streets all over the world now. In Paris is just one example. There's major riots against the government and the police just recently.
Paris has seen a second night of rioting over calls French police have been too heavy-handed in the treatment of ethnic minorities during the coronavirus lockdown. Anger erupted in the French capital on Sunday night and continues on over alleged racist police attacks. Fireworks explode in the streets and fires rage while armed police tried to disperse groups of protesters congregating in Villeneuve-le-Garenne. In response, police used tear gas and baton charges in the northern Paris suburb.
In the US, it's been all over the place. In fact, there was one, I think it was in, what's the state Philadelphia is in? Philadelphia, Pennsylvania? I think it's there. Not very good with the geography. I don't care about government lines. To me, it's all just the world and we're all just humans. But that's a big part of their agenda from way back, is making us think we're all identify with all these different things that they create. But anyway, a bunch of militia guys rolled up in big vehicles with heavy weapons to protest the lockdown. There's only a few sort of problems with that. Is free men do not protest to their slave owners. They just go back to work. They just go back to their regular lives. And certainly they don't wear some sort of politician's hat while they do it. The same politician, Trump, who's doing most of these things to them. So as usual, very confused people. But this is going to continue, in my opinion. And that's why Facebook and UK governments and all kinds of people are trying to make it so you can't post about anything to do with a lockdown on the internet. They don't want people to know. Because if enough people wake up, just like in that ant movie, the grasshoppers all of a sudden are exposed. And I think that's also a big reason they've got huge armaments from the military in places in the US for if people start to really, what you could call revolt.
Do you see this? This is an aerial photograph of the video I showed you yesterday of all the military vehicles. This was just pulled up this morning. That's the quarry. See it? There's the quarry. And if you zoom in on it, wow, look at all those military trucks hidden right in plain sight. Nobody sees them. Well, guess what? There's more. This is from another quarry. A subscriber just sent me this morning. You notice anything strange hidden behind this fence at a quarry?
And I don't even really like revolting, because that means to do a revolution, which means to go back to where you started and do it all again. I much more like the word rebel, because I'm not revolting against anything. In a way, I'm rebelling, even though I don't even consider myself rebelling. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Living free, being free, and not adhering to anyone who wants to take any of my freedom away. But we're starting to see some pretty interesting stuff happening because nearly everywhere is empty. seeing a lot of wild animals just sort of taking over the streets in a lot of places, because the brainwashed masses of humans are all scared of the invisible enemy, or the beast, that is killing hardly anybody. You see, one of the funniest was seeing a bunch of sheep at McDonald's, because really not much has changed, because there used to be a lot of sheep there too, called sheeple. But they're all too scared now because they've been mind controlled. And they're all scared to leave their houses. This magical spell is really, it's pretty incredible how well it's worked. And a big part of the spell and a big part of the initiation ritual they're trying to get billions of people to go through right now is to make them feel like everything's changed and nothing will ever be the same. And that will actually be the case unless people wake up very quickly. They will not stop this for basically ever. Just like every other war that places like the US government do. The war on drugs, that's still going on. It's been going on for 50 years. It's killed millions of people. Of course, the war of terror has killed so many people and caused so much tyranny in the world under things like the Patriot Act. And this is the new one, where if people don't wake up in time, they're going to be begging or wanting a vaccine for something that doesn't even exist. That will end up basically enslaving them forever. They'll be tracked, chipped, and if Bill Gates has his way, people will become just like a battery in a machine. That's what he wants to do with his new patent number 666, by the way, to turn people into machines that create his own cryptocurrency. Don't know if you remember that part in Matrix.
This is the construct. It's our loading program. We can load anything from clothing to equipment, weapons, training simulations, anything we need.
Right now, we're inside a computer program?
Is it really so hard to believe? Your clothes are different, the plugs in your arms and head are gone. Your hair has changed. Your appearance now is what we call residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital self.
This isn't real.
What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. This is the world that you know. The world as it was at the end of the 20th century. It exists now only as part of a neural interactive simulation that we call the Matrix. You've been living in a dream world, Neo. This is the world as it exists today. Welcome to the desert of the real. What is the Matrix? Control. The Matrix is a computer-generated dream world, built to keep us under control in order to change a human being into this.
No. I don't believe it. It's not possible.
I didn't say it would be easy, Neo. I just said it would be the truth.
So while everyone's under the spell, everything's being stolen from them. Worldwide, the economy is being destroyed. Oil, for the first time, fell to minus $30. So you're basically saying, if you're a person who creates oil at a refinery, you don't have to pay me anything. If you give me $30 per barrel, or if I give you $30 per barrel, sorry, will you please take this away? It's like overfilling all of our stuff, and it's worth less than zero. It's worth negative 30. The ramifications from all this stuff will be so massive that I don't... Oh man, I'm actually trying to finish my book right now on this collapse while it's in the midst of collapse. I've been working on it for a year. But in a kind of a funny way, maybe it's okay that I was a bit late getting it done, because this certificate of vaccination ID plan, Operation Certificate of Identification Vaccine, really ties into what I was talking about how they were going to take everything down. And everything hasn't been totally taken down yet. It'll probably take weeks or maybe months. Who knows? Maybe another year or so, or two. Who knows? We'll see, before everything's just completely destroyed. So my book, if I can finish it, I'm trying to finish it this week, should hopefully still be in time to let a lot of people know about what's going on. And essentially what this is, like I said, is to destroy the entire world financially and monetarily in order to bring in a one world type government and issue a new currency, which will be a digital currency, and force people to get vaccinated so they're all identified, and they will not be able to buy or sell in the regular market, in the non-free market, in the non-black market, without this mark of the beast. And it's hilarious to see some of the stuff that some of these people are saying, like Steve Munchkin, little gremlin from Skull and Bones. He came out and said, "I think it will be months," Munchkin said today. "I definitely don't think it will be years for the US economy to recover." Oh, I love hearing from these propaganda guys, because everything they say is always the opposite of the truth. Just look back to Rumsey. Remember good old Rumsey? Terrorist Rumsey? Donald Rumsfeld? The day before September 11th, 2001, he announced that $2.3 trillion, 23, by the way, is the number of, basically a major number of the Skull and Bones people, had gone missing.
According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
2.3 trillion with a T. That's $8,000 for every man, woman, and child in America.
And of course, the lapdog prostitute propaganda media barely even reported on it, but by the next day, no one ever talked about it again, because 3 buildings fell at free fall speed in New York, theoretically because they were hit by 2 planes, and the accounting department at the Pentagon, which is shaped like a pentagram, I don't know if you'd ever noticed that, blew up. They said it was hit by a plane, although there's not one image in one of the most secure buildings on Earth showing that. And Rumsey said about, he was way back, he's been around, he was back meeting with Saddam Hussein, doing globalist deals way back then. And after they attacked Iraq, I think for the first time, which was like in the mid-80s, or maybe 89, 90 maybe. So 30 years ago, he was asked, how long do you think this war, this occupation will go on? And I forget his exact response, we'll look it up, but it's something like, yeah, it should be days or weeks, probably not even months. 30 years later, who's still in Iraq? The US military. 30 years. Total cost, I don't even want to guess, in the tens of trillions of dollars. And because, well, he had weapons of mass destruction. No, he didn't. Even George Bush, right after that, at a media dinner, laughed all about it. They laugh in your faces. They don't put it on the mainstream media where most people are hypnotized. But he said, can't find any weapons of mass destruction over here.
Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere. Nope, no weapons over there. Maybe under here. Oops, this photo wasn't supposed to be in here. This is the Skull and Bone secret signal.
Yeah, can't find him anywhere. Can't find Osama bin Laden either. Well, they said they did, but they threw him in the ocean. Sure. Can't find this COVID anywhere. I can't find it anywhere. Well, just have trust that they know what they're doing. Yeah, this is going to be so brutally bad. Most people have no idea. Even just the oil thing. Oil is the biggest market in the world and has the biggest derivatives market in the world. What happens when the price of it goes from $60 a few months ago to quite quickly to $20, and then within a couple of hours down to negative $35? What happens is billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars get wiped out, and a lot of them are held by the banks in general, especially debt to the oil companies. The current June contract, which just starts basically today, coming into effect, for oil is around $9. Most oil producers in Canada, I don't know off the top of my head, but I think it's $30 or more, might be even as high as $40 to produce oil. In many places, it's definitely 20 to 30. I think even in Saudi Arabian place like that, it's still around 15 or something like that. So at current prices, no oil producer in the world can continue to exist. The ramifications of that are going to be massive. And that is the real goal of all this. At the end of the day, this will be looked back at. I look at it like this right now, but most people, just like 9/11, will take them 10 or 20 years to figure it out. As the biggest financial terror attack in world history by the same old people who've been doing it for centuries. Not to say the exact same people, but the Rothschild family, the Rockefellers, and the people that they work for. They've been doing this for a long time. And really, I think the only things that have a chance of surviving through this are, once again, precious metals and some cryptocurrencies. Rafael Laverde of the Crypto Vigilante just put out another great video of him just rambling. He's got an amazing mind. He thinks about things so differently than most people. Very intellectual, very about systems and stuff like that. I'll just play a couple minutes of it here, and we'll put the link to it down below. Make sure you watch the whole thing if you're interested in that kind of stuff. And subscribe to that channel, because he puts out some amazing stuff.
Cryptocurrency augments human nature. That's all it does. You have the desire as a human person to interact with other people because it is what is most beneficial to you, to enter into the market, to provide value, to pay others for whatever they provide you in value, and for you to attain from them what they are providing in value in the market. That's something that they will never be able to that's something that they will never be able to take away from humanity. And now we've augmented that capability, and like I said in the last video, now you're able to transact cryptocurrency with anyone, whether it be your neighbor to someone in China, without having to go through a third party. And that's amazing. And that's something that these megalomaniacs, that's the real concern. Their real concern is that you're free. For the first time ever, you're completely free. And it's up to you if you're going to continue pursuing that freedom. It's up to you. It's no one else. No one else in this world is going to be the hero but you. In your own life, with your family, for yourself. There's no hero coming. And a lot of people talk about Q as if Q was this whatever. But you know what? Assume. Err on the side of caution. Even if you think that that's true, pretend that it's not. And ground yourself in reality. And ask yourself, what options do I have as a human being to interact with the world, to create a better world? And pretty soon you'll realize that Central banking is not a viable alternative anymore, not something that could ever be trusted, especially now. It's not something that cannot be trusted at all. You know very well that they're trying to create half-assed versions of cryptocurrency. You know that SWIFT is trying to do it. You know that all the banks are trying to have their own private blockchains. Even Microsoft is trying to create its own half-assed version of a private blockchain. IBM was trying to do something like that. I mean, it's ridiculous. These people are ridiculous. We don't waste our time with bullshit of what they're trying to do. For that, there's plenty of other channels that keep up to date as to what these megalomaniacs are trying to do. In reality, we know that they're trying to create half-assed versions of crypto.
So the good news is that if you're aware of all this stuff going on, you have a much, much better chance of surviving, which means avoiding all of their identification and vaccine programs and getting chipped. And financially, because still your average financial advisor will not be ever recommending precious metals or cryptocurrencies, which are the only two things that will probably be left standing at the end of this, along with a new digital dollar that they'll force on people. But those will be the only things kind of left standing at the end of this. This is going to be pretty incredible. But just like at the start with those ants, if people begin to realize not only what's going on, but their own power, everything could change in a second. And what it will take is continuing to spread this information. Spread that article from, I forget where I got it. Was it Reason? No, it was a different one. I'll put in the links down below. I think it was Reason.com that had the chart of this year's COVID versus every other flu for the last 10 years, and it's nowhere near the worst one. Spread that to people. Or even show, because a lot of people still think if the government says it, it's right. They put out, the LA County people, that the death rate looks like it's 0.1%. And that's about the same as every year. The supposed deaths from the supposed symptoms of influenza, which isn't even a virus actually. But I won't get into too much about that. I've talked about that before. So, oh, by the way, just want to mention, I mentioned yesterday that Ed Bugos and his associate Kashyap from India were working on an alert to take advantage of everything going on in the oil market and make a fortune. And I said it'd be out by yesterday, but it turns out they're a little late on it. So by the time you see this video, which should be on, I think, Wednesday, it should be out. If you don't see it yet, just stay tuned. It'll be out any minute now, basically, if you're waiting for that. And if you want to get access to that, you still can at dollarvigilante.com/subscribe. Watching all this is just unbelievable. I still kind of in a little bit of shock at how well and how easily they could do it again. But in reality, it hasn't been that easy this time. All you have to do is look at Killgate's Instagram, and there's millions of people who know what I'm talking about here.
What's up, Danny? All right, man. What do you know, Dave? You can take out the master. The case fatality rate's like 0.1 to 0.3 according to USC. Is it really? That's reassuring. USC. Everybody here's been vaccinated anyway. USC and LA County Public Health come up with a study. They found that there are 7,000 cases in California, but they really believe that there are anywhere from 221,000 to 442,000 people who were infected. Really? Yeah. So that makes it 0.1 to 0.3? Does a study to give out by? Yeah, just give it to that. So it suggests that the case fatality rate is 10. It seems to be. Wow. Which puts you right in line with the flu. Yeah, exactly. That's what it is.
So just make sure that continues. Spread the information. I even heard about some people just going around putting little flyers in people's mailboxes. Everyone's stuck in their house anyway. And just put on the page a few websites, a few links, maybe a few YouTube videos. You can even throw mine on there if you want. Throw on Corbett Report, throw on TrueStream Media, throw on tons of stuff like that. And just say everything you're being told is a lie. I even heard from one person, they said, I don't know who they were, but some little kids were doing that in their neighborhood, and one of the things they were recommending was our videos here. I was like, wow, that's awesome. These are some of the things you can do to wake people up. And the more we can wake people up, the more we can basically slow down what they're doing. It's still going to be a huge rebuilding progress, even if we stop them. But if we don't stop what they're doing, if we don't wake up enough people, you won't believe how crazy bad this is going to get. For most people. I don't think us. I think those of us who have eyes to see and ears to hear will survive through this. But most people won't. So I'll leave it there. Lucy, what are you doing? I'm standing over here in the shade a little bit. It's really hot today. And I was thinking maybe if you don't mind, we could go for some tacos. And I can give a few kisses.
You've seen the Dollar Vigilante on mainstream media trolling the fake news, and seen Jeff Berwick travel inside places like Venezuela and Cuba to expose the truth about what's happening in those socialist paradises. To get even more, make sure to subscribe to the Dollar Vigilante newsletter to receive 2 full 30-plus page issues from the Dollar Vigilante each month, plus market alerts on precious metals, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and gold mining stocks by going to dollarvigilante.com/subscribe. Click on the link in the notes below or go to dollarvigilante.com/subscribe to find out more.